Captain Hyunwoo stared at the dead ship floating in space. It was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. The metal was black and twisted like it had been burned by something terrible. His crew had found it 3 days ago in the void reaches where no one was supposed to go. "Sir, we're getting some kind of signal from inside," said Communications Officer Dongjun. His voice was quiet, like he was afraid to speak too loud. "It's very weak, but it's there." Hyunwoo looked at the alien ship through the window of his own vessel, the UES Determination. He had been exploring space for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The ship was old, maybe thousands of years old. But something inside was still working. "Dr. So-young, what do you think?" he asked the woman standing next to him. She was the best person he knew for studying old alien things. Her eyes were bright with excitement as she looked at the readings on her screen. "The metal is made from materials we don't understand," she said. "But the energy signature is familiar. It matches some of the oldest ruins we've found on dead worlds. This could be from the Kethvar." Commander Tai-min looked up from his station. He was in charge of keeping the crew safe, and he did not like the sound of this. The Kethvar disappeared 50,000 years ago. No one knows what happened to them. "That's exactly why we need to investigate," So-young said. She was already putting on her exploration suit. "This could tell us everything about one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries." Hyunwoo made his decision. "We're going aboard. Taemin, choose 3 security officers. So-young, bring your research team. Dongjun, keep listening to that signal." The alien ship had no lights inside. Their flashlights cut through the darkness like knives. The hallways were tall and wide, built for beings much larger than humans. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly when their lights touched them. "The symbols are responding to our presence," whispered Engineer Nari, one of So-young's team. "It's like the ship knows we're here." They walked deeper into the ship. The signal was getting stronger, leading them toward what looked like the command center. When they reached it, Hyunwoo stopped and stared. The room was massive, filled with machines that hummed quietly even after all these years. In the center of the room was a large crystal, taller than a person. It pulsed with soft blue light, and the signal was coming from inside it. "It's a data storage device," So-young said, running her scanner over the crystal. "But it's like nothing we've ever seen. The amount of information in here could fill 1,000 libraries. Can you access it?" Hyunwoo asked. So-young connected her equipment to the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the room filled with light, and a voice spoke in their minds. It did not use words, but somehow they understood every meaning. The voice belonged to someone called Veltum, an archivist of the Kethvar. As the voice spoke, images appeared in the air around them. They saw the galaxy as it was 50,000 years ago, filled with Kethvar cities and ships. The Kethvar were tall and graceful, with 4 arms and skin that changed color with their emotions. But then the images changed. Something dark was coming from the empty space between galaxies. It moved like a living shadow, consuming entire star systems. Wherever it touched, the light went out forever. "The darkness comes for us as it came for the builders before us," the voice of Veltum said. "We have fought, but we cannot win. They are too many, too hungry. But we have not given up hope." The images showed Kethvar ships traveling to a small blue and green world. Earth. But this was Earth long ago, when humans were still living in caves and fighting for survival. A great disaster had struck the planet. Volcanoes were erupting everywhere, and the sky was dark with ash. The human race was dying. "We found them on the edge of extinction," Veltum's voice continued. "A young species with such potential. They had something we had lost long ago. They never gave up, no matter how bad things became. We decided to help them, but secretly. We could not make contact, for they were not ready. Instead, we guided their development. We cleaned their air, helped their crops grow, and made small changes to their bodies that would help them survive." Hyunwoo felt his breath catch in his throat. The Kethvar had saved humanity. Without them, humans would never have survived the great disaster. "We did this because we saw what they could become," the voice said. "These humans were different from any species we had known. They grew stronger when facing impossible challenges. They protected each other even when it meant death. They had something that could stand against the darkness." The images showed the Kethvar's final battle. Their beautiful cities were burning. Their ships were being destroyed by creatures made of living shadow. But even as they died, they were working on something important. "We prepared them for what is coming," Veltum said. "We gave them the genes they would need, the instincts that would serve them. We hid our knowledge where they could find it when the time was right. The debt of life demands repayment. When the silence falls upon our worlds, they must remember. Only they who were forged in fire can stand against what devours stars. The voice began to fade. The devourers sleep now, but they will wake. The 50,000-year cycle nears completion. Find our hidden places. Learn what we have left for you. And remember, hope is the strongest weapon against the dark. The crystal went dark. The room fell silent except for the sound of their own breathing. Captain, Dongjun's voice came through their communicators. I'm picking up something strange. 3 star systems in the outer rim have gone dark in the past month. No communications, no energy readings. It's like they just disappeared. Hyunwoo looked at his team. They all understood what this meant. The darkness was returning just as Veltum had warned. And somehow humanity was supposed to stop it. So Young, how much of that data can you download? He asked. All of it, but it will take time, she replied. There are also coordinates here. Locations of hidden HFY facilities scattered across the galaxy. Do it, Hyunwoo ordered. Get everything. We need to understand what the HFY knew about these devourers. As his team worked, Hyunwoo stared at the dead crystal. The HFY had saved humanity 50,000 years ago, betting everything on the hope that humans would one day return the favor. Now that day had come. But how could humans fight something that had destroyed a civilization as advanced as the HFY? How could they stand against creatures that ate entire star systems? Sir, Taemin said quietly, what are we going to tell the Galactic Council? Hyunwoo thought about the council, with all their pride and politics. They barely listened to humans on normal days. How would they react to a warning about ancient monsters that ate stars? We tell them the truth, he said finally, and we pray they listen before it's too late. The download finished and they prepared to leave the dead ship. But as they walked back through the dark hallways, Hyunwoo couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not by enemies, but by the ghosts of the HFY, hoping that their chosen champions would not fail. Outside, the stars looked different now. Each point of light was precious, a world that could be saved or lost. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, something ancient was stirring, hungry for the light of a billion suns. The coordinates led them to a place that should not exist, hidden behind a dying star system, where space itself seemed to bend and twist. They found HFY Prime. The planet looked normal from far away, but as they got closer, Hyunwoo realized it was protected by technology beyond human understanding. How is this possible? Asked pilot Jiho, staring at his instruments. The gravitational readings don't make sense. It's like the planet exists in a bubble outside normal space. Dr. So-young was studying the data they had taken from the dead ship. The HFY called it a fold sanctuary. They could hide entire worlds from the rest of the universe. No wonder no one ever found their home planet. As the determination moved closer, the planet's defenses recognized something in their ship's computers. The stolen HFY data acted like a key, and suddenly they could see the planet clearly. It was beautiful, covered in crystal cities that caught and reflected light in amazing patterns. But it was also dead. Nothing moved in those cities. Life signs, announced scanner operator Young Mai. Very faint, but definitely there. Coming from what looks like the main temple complex. They landed near a building that rose like a mountain from the planet's surface. It was made of the same material as the dead ship, but this metal was silver instead of black. As they walked toward the entrance, symbols began glowing on the walls, welcoming them in a language they somehow understood. Inside, the temple was vast and empty. Their footsteps echoed as they walked through halls lined with statues of HFY, but these statues were different from the images they had seen. These HFY looked tired, sad, like they had lost something precious. At the heart of the temple, they found him. The last HFY sat in a chair made of living crystal. He was tall and thin, with forearms and skin that shifted between blue and silver. His eyes were closed and he did not move. But when they entered the chamber, those ancient eyes opened and looked directly at Hyunwoo. You came, the being said, his voice speaking directly into their minds. I have waited so long. I am Zethnal, keeper of the final watch. I have slept for 50,000 years waiting for the chosen ones to arrive. Hyunwoo stepped forward. We found your message, your warning about the darkness. We came to learn what we must do. Zethnal rose from his chair, moving slowly like someone very old and tired. You are exactly as we hoped you would become. Strong, curious, brave. But you do not yet understand what you truly are. The Kethvar moved to a wall covered in symbols. When he touched it, the room filled with new images. They saw Earth again, but this time the view was different. They could see the changes the Kethvar had made to early humans, small adjustments to their genes and brains. We did not just save your species, Zethnal explained. We created you. Every human alive carries our gift in their blood. You were designed to be the perfect weapon against the Void Swarm. Void Swarm? Asked Engineer Nari. That is what the darkness truly is, Zethnal said. Not a single creature, but millions of entities that think as one. They come from the space between galaxies, where no light has ever shone. They feed on the energy of living stars and the life force of entire civilizations. Every 50,000 years they wake from their long sleep and choose a new galaxy to consume. The images showed the Void Swarm in action. Creatures made of living shadow, some as small as ships, others larger than moons. They moved through space like a black tide, surrounding star systems and draining them of all energy. When they were done, nothing remained but cold, dead rock floating in empty space. We fought them once before, Zethnal continued. Our weapons were powerful, our ships fast, our minds sharp. But none of it mattered. The swarm learns from every battle. They adapt to every weapon. What destroys one of them only makes the rest stronger. Commander Tae-min looked grim. Then how can we hope to succeed where you failed? Zethnal turned to face the humans, and for the first time his expression showed something like hope. Because you have something we never possessed. Something the swarm cannot understand or copy. He gestured to Engineer Nari, who stepped forward nervously. Zethnal placed one of his 4 hands on her forehead, and suddenly she gasped. I can feel it, she whispered. There's something in my mind. Something that fights against the cold. It's warm and bright and angry. Human emotions, Zethnal explained. But not just any emotions. Your species feels things more deeply than any other we have known. Your love, your hope, your determination to protect others, even your anger when facing injustice. These feelings create what you might call psychic energy. To the Void Swarm, this energy is like poison. Dr. So-Young was scanning Nari with her instruments. Captain, her brain activity has increased by 300%. But it's not random. There's a pattern here, like a signal being broadcast. Exactly, said Zethnal. When humans feel strong emotions, especially when fighting to protect something they love, they generate frequencies that disrupt the swarm's hive mind. A single human feeling true determination can create a dead zone in their mental network. Pilot Jiho stepped forward. What about our reflexes? In the war simulations, human pilots always score better than other species, even when the alien ships are faster. Zethnal nodded approvingly. Another gift we gave you. Humans can think in chaos, adapt to the impossible, and make decisions without perfect information. The swarm operates on pure logic and shared knowledge. They cannot predict what humans will do because humans often don't know themselves until they do it. The old Kethvar moved to another wall, this one showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked locations across dozens of star systems. These are our weapon caches, he said. Technology designed to amplify human abilities. Armor that responds to your emotions, ships that become extensions of your will, weapons that grow stronger the more determined you are to use them. How many weapons? Asked Hyunwoo. Enough to arm every human in the galaxy and more. We spent our final centuries preparing for this day, but the weapons are useless without the warriors to use them. Zethnal's expression became grave. I must tell you the full truth. The swarm vanguard has already entered your galaxy. 3 systems have fallen in the past 30 days. The pattern has begun just as it did 50,000 years ago. Young Mi checked her communicator. Sir, we're receiving emergency transmissions from the Outer Rim. Colonial ships are reporting strange energy readings before losing contact completely. The main swarm fleet will arrive within 1 year. Zethnal continued. When they do, they will move toward the galactic core, consuming every star along the way. If they reach the central black hole, they can drain its energy and extinguish every star in the galaxy simultaneously. The weight of this knowledge settled on the humans like a heavy blanket. They were not just facing an enemy. They were facing the end of everything. But there is hope, Zethnal said, his mental voice becoming stronger. You are not the same species we saved 50,000 years ago. You have grown, learned, spread across the stars. You have allies now, friends among the other species. And most importantly, you have something we never had. What's that? Asked Hyunwoo. Time to prepare. We were caught by surprise. You have been warned. The debt your species owes us can be repaid by saving not just your own people, but every living being in the galaxy. Zethnal approached Dr. So Young and placed his hands on either side of her head. She cried out as information flooded into her mind through her neural implant. When it was over, she staggered but remained standing. I've given you the locations of every cache, every hidden facility, every piece of technology we left behind, Zethnal said. But more than that, I've given you the knowledge of how to use them. The weapons will only respond to humans, and only to humans who understand their true purpose. Which is? Asked Taimin. To protect the light, Zethnal replied simply. In all its forms. The light of stars, the light of life, the light of hope itself. This is what the swarm seeks to devour, and this is what you must defend. The old Kethvar was beginning to fade, becoming transparent like a ghost. My time is ending, he said. I have held on only long enough to pass on this knowledge. But remember, you do not fight alone. Every species in the galaxy is your ally, whether they know it or not. Every star that shines is counting on you, and every human who stands against the darkness carries the hopes of two civilizations. As Zethnal disappeared, his final words echoed in their minds. The debt must be repaid or all light dies forever. But I believe in you. You are our children, forged in the fires of adversity, tempered by hope. Show the galaxy what it means to be human. The temple fell silent. Outside, the first reports were coming in of entire fleets vanishing without a trace. The Void Swarm was no longer hiding. The war for the galaxy had begun. And humanity, the species everyone thought was weak and unimportant, was the only hope of victory. Nexus Station hung in space like a giant metal flower, its petals spreading out to welcome ships from every corner of the galaxy. It was the home of the Galactic Council, where representatives from hundreds of species made decisions that affected billions of lives. As the Determination approached the docking bay, Hyunwoo felt the weight of what he had to do. They're not going to believe us, said Commander Taemin, looking out at the massive station. The Council has always thought humans were just good for manual labor and dangerous jobs. Dr. So Young touched the side of her head, where Zethnal had downloaded the Kethvar knowledge. They have to believe us. The evidence is right here in my brain. But Hyunwoo knew his friend was being too hopeful. The Galactic Council was controlled by the Hegemony, a group of the oldest and most advanced species in the galaxy. They had ruled for thousands of years, and they did not like being told what to do by younger species. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in circles that rose toward the ceiling like a stadium. At the center sat Chancellor Vextar, a tall being with purple skin and 6 arms. He was the leader of the Hegemony, and he looked at Hyunwoo the way someone might look at an annoying insect. Captain Hyunwoo of the human fleet, Vextar said, his voice echoing through the chamber. You have requested an emergency session to discuss what you call a galaxy-ending threat. Please present your evidence. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by hundreds of alien representatives. Some looked curious, others bored, and many looked annoyed that their time was being wasted by a human. Honored council members, Hyunwoo began, 3 weeks ago, my crew discovered evidence of an ancient threat that destroyed the Kethvar civilization 50,000 years ago. This threat has returned, and it poses a danger to every living being in the galaxy. He activated a holographic display showing the images from Zethnal's message. The chamber filled with pictures of the Void Swarm consuming star systems, leaving nothing but darkness behind. The entity is called the Void Swarm, Hyunwoo continued. They are creatures from dark space that feed on stellar energy and life force. They operate on a 50,000-year cycle, and according to our information, their vanguard has already entered our galaxy. The chamber erupted in noise as representatives talked among themselves. Most of the sounds Hyunwoo heard were not encouraging. Admiral Quilron, a being that looked like a cross between a squid and a robot, raised one of his metal tentacles. Captain, the technology you're showing us is clearly fake. No species could destroy entire star systems. Our sensors would have detected such creatures long before they reached our borders. With respect, Admiral, said Dr. So Young, stepping forward. Our outer rim monitoring stations have reported 3 complete system blackouts in the past month. No communications, no energy signatures, no survivors. Chancellor Vextar waved one of his hands dismissively. Isolated equipment failures. Perhaps pirates using new jamming technology. There are many simple explanations that don't require us to believe in monsters from ancient mythology. Ambassador Yulseth of the Trade Federation stood up. She was one of the few council members who had always been friendly to humans, which made her next words even more painful. Captain Hyunwoo, I respect your service record, but humans have always been prone to seeing threats where none exist. Your species evolved on a dangerous world, fighting constant wars. Perhaps this is simply your warrior instincts projecting fear onto normal cosmic phenomena. The laughter that followed this comment made Hyunwoo's face burn with embarrassment and anger, but he forced himself to stay calm. Honored Ambassador, this is not human paranoia. We have physical evidence, recorded messages from the last Kethvar survivor, and detailed technical data about swarm capabilities. Keth Moran, the Council's chief xenobiologist, stood up with a superior smile on his scaled face. Captain, the Kethvar disappeared 50,000 years ago. Any supposed survivor would have died long before your species even discovered fire. What you're presenting is clearly a hoax, probably created by human extremists trying to gain political power through fear. Furthermore, Keth Mirren continued, his voice growing louder, this entire presentation reveals exactly why humans should not be given positions of real authority. Warrior species like humans see war everywhere because that's all their primitive minds understand. You look at the vast beauty of the cosmos and see only threats to fight. The chamber filled with approving sounds from many of the representatives. Hyunwoo felt his team tense behind him, but he held up a hand to keep them calm. Honored counselors, he said, I ask only that you investigate these claims. Send your own ships to examine the dead systems. Verify our data with your own scientists. Chancellor Vexitar was about to respond when Communications Officer Dong-jun burst through the chamber doors. Protocol demanded that only authorized speakers could enter during a session, but the young man's face was so pale that the guards let him pass. Sir, Dong-jun said, breathing hard from running, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we just received an emergency transmission from the Velkorian home system. Admiral Quilron laughed. The Velkorians? They're one of our most advanced member species. Their home system has defense networks that could stop an entire invasion fleet. That's just it, sir, Dong-jun replied, his voice shaking. The entire system is gone. The chamber fell silent. What do you mean, gone? Asked Chancellor Vexitar, his purple skin turning a lighter shade. Dong-jun activated his portable communicator, and a new holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed empty space where the Velkorian system should have been. No planets, no stations, no debris, just a cold dead star that gave off no light. 20 billion Velkorians, Dong-jun whispered. They just vanished. The entire system went dark at exactly 1427 Galactic Standard Time. Our long-range sensors picked up some kind of energy surge just before it happened, but then, nothing. Tactical analyst Young Mi had been monitoring communications from her post on the Determination. Her voice came through Dong-jun's communicator, tight with fear. Captain, I'm tracking the pattern of disappearances. Kelthar system, gone 3 weeks ago. Morgoth Prime, gone 2 weeks ago. Velkorian system, gone 2 hours ago. They're all in a straight line pointing directly toward the galactic core. The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives were shouting questions, demanding answers, calling for their home fleets. But Chancellor Vexitar stood up, and his authority was still strong enough to bring order. This is obviously some kind of new weapon, he declared. Perhaps the work of terrorists or rogue scientists. We will investigate immediately and find the source of these attacks. Sir, said Hyunwoo desperately, this isn't a weapon. It's exactly what I warned you about. The void swarm is moving toward the galactic core, consuming everything in its path. But Vexitar was no longer listening to him. The Chancellor was already giving orders to Admiral Quilron about fleet deployments and security sweeps. Then Scout Captain Minsu's voice came through the communication system. He had been sent to investigate the Velkorian system, and his ship had just returned. All council members, Minsu's voice was barely steady. I'm transmitting visual records from the Velkorian system. Please prepare yourselves. What you're about to see, there are no words for it. The holographic display changed, showing the view from Minsu's scout ship as it approached where the Velkorian homeworld had once been. At first, they saw only empty space, but then the cameras focused on something floating in the darkness. It was a creature, if it could be called that. It looked like a living shadow the size of a small moon, with tendrils of black energy reaching out in all directions. Around it floated smaller shadows, thousands of them, all pulsing with the same dark light. But the worst part was what they were doing. The creatures were feeding. Streams of golden energy flowed from the dead star into the largest shadow, and in that energy, barely visible, were the shapes of living beings. The life force of 20 billion Velcorians was being slowly consumed by monsters from dark space. By the seven suns, whispered Ambassador Yulseth. What are those things? Void swarm drones, said Dr. So-Young quietly. Just like Zethnal showed us. They're harvesting the life energy of everyone who lived in that system. The chamber was completely silent now. Even Chancellor Vextar looked shaken as he stared at the impossible sight on the display. Captain Minsu's voice continued his report. The creatures detected my ship when I got too close. They tried to communicate with me. Not with words, but directly into my mind. They were hungry, so very hungry, and they said something else. They said they were just the advanced scouts. The real feast is coming. Chancellor Vextar slowly turned to look at Hyunwoo. For the first time since the session began, there was no arrogance in his expression. Only fear. Captain, Vextar said, his voice much quieter than before. If what you're telling us is true, how long do we have? According to the Kethvar data, less than 1 year before the main swarm arrives, Hyunwoo replied. Maybe less now that they've started actively feeding. The Chancellor looked around the chamber at the hundreds of representatives, all staring at him with terror in their eyes. The first thing Admiral Hyejin did when she took command of the EIE, Galactic Defense, was throw out every military manual the Council had ever written. Forget everything you think you know about space combat, she told the assembled fleet. Commanders from dozens of different species, they were meeting on the battlecruiser Soul's Pride, humanity's newest warship, hastily converted into a mobile command center. General Wusung stood beside her, his weathered face serious as he looked at the holographic map showing swarm movements. The enemy adapts to everything we throw at them. Every tactic we use becomes useless after the first battle. So we're going to do something they can't adapt to. Which is what exactly? Asked Admiral Quilrun. The metal-tentacled being had been skeptical of human leadership from the beginning, but recent swarm victories had made him more willing to listen. Chaos. Hyejin said simply. Humans don't fight like other species. We don't make perfect formations or follow predictable patterns. We improvise, we adapt, and we fight with our hearts as much as our heads. She activated a new display showing recent battle reports. Look at these swarm attack patterns. They're completely logical, perfectly coordinated. They study their enemy, learn their weaknesses, and then exploit them with mathematical precision. But what happens when the enemy has no pattern to study? Commander Sung Ho, recently promoted after his success at holding a minor swarm incursion, stepped forward. Ma'am, we tested this at the Caligate Defense. My Marines held that position for 72 hours straight, not because we had better weapons or more ships, but because we kept changing our tactics every few minutes. The swarm couldn't predict what we would do next because we didn't know ourselves. Dr. Jinwoo, the scientist who had been studying the recovered Kethvar technology, raised his hand. Admiral, we've made a breakthrough with the alien weapons. They don't just respond to human users, they amplify human emotional states. The more determined a soldier is, the more powerful their weapon becomes. Show them, Hyejin ordered. Jinwoo activated a recording from the weapons testing facility. On the screen, a human marine named Corporal Haewon was holding what looked like an ordinary rifle. But as she focused on protecting her squad mates in a simulated battle, the weapon began to glow with blue energy. Her shots didn't just hit the targets, they completely disintegrated them. We don't understand the science behind it, Jinwoo explained, but somehow strong human emotions create a field that the Kethvar technology can harness. Love, hope, determination to protect others, even righteous anger, all make the weapons more effective. Captain Yoonji of the merchant fleet raised her hand. Admiral, what about those of us who aren't soldiers? My ships are cargo haulers, not warships. Hyejin smiled. Captain, your fleet is going to be one of our most important assets. We're going to turn your cargo ships into mobile fortresses. Not pretty, not elegant, but absolutely unpredictable. Over the following weeks, the human approach to galactic defense shocked everyone, including their allies. Traditional battle lines became impossible when human commanders would suddenly split their forces, regroup in impossible formations, or attack from directions that made no tactical sense. The first major test came at the Theta sector, where a full swarm assault force was moving toward a heavily populated star system. General Wu Sung deployed his forces in what every military textbook said was a disaster waiting to happen. "Sir," said his Velkorian tactical advisor, "you're spreading our ships too thin. Basic strategy says we should concentrate our firepower." "Basic strategy is what got 3 civilizations destroyed," Wu Sung replied. "We're going to do something else." When the swarm arrived, they found human ships scattered across the system in small groups, apparently confused and poorly organized. The swarm's hive mind quickly calculated the optimal attack pattern to destroy the scattered forces. But the moment they committed to their attack, everything changed. The scattered human ships suddenly moved in perfect coordination, not toward each other, but in a pattern that surrounded the swarm forces from all sides. At the same time, every human soldier, pilot, and crew member began focusing on the same thought: protecting the 5 billion civilians on the planets below. The effect was immediate and devastating. Human weapons began firing with energy levels that should have been impossible. Swarm creatures that had shrugged off conventional attacks were torn apart by beams of pure white light, and for the first time since the war began, the swarm's coordination faltered. "They're confused," reported scanner operator Young Mi from the command ship. "The swarm's mental network is breaking down in sectors where human emotions are strongest." Commander Seung Ho, leading a boarding action against a swarm command creature, felt it himself. As his Marines fought their way through the living shadow of the creature's body, their determination to save innocent lives created a bubble of clear space around them. The swarm's mental attacks couldn't penetrate the wall of human willpower. "It's like they can't understand us," said Marine Sergeant Dalsu, firing his Kethvar weapon at a shadow creature 3 times his size. "Every time they try to predict what we'll do, we do something completely different." The Battle of Theta Sector lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the swarm assault force had been completely destroyed. Not a single human ship was lost, and civilian casualties were 0. But the victory came with a cost. The effort of maintaining such intense emotions for so long left many of the human fighters exhausted. Some collapsed at their stations. Others needed medical treatment for what the doctors called emotional burnout. "It's not sustainable," Dr. Jin Woo warned Admiral Hai Jin after examining the exhausted crews. "Humans can fight this way for short periods, but if we try to maintain this level of emotional intensity for months, we'll burn out our own people." Captain Yoon-ji had a different perspective. Her merchant fleet had performed better than anyone expected, using improvised weapons and unpredictable tactics to outfight swarm forces that should have crushed them easily. "Maybe that's the point," she said during the post-battle briefing. "We don't fight like this all the time. We fight like this when it matters most, when everything we love is at stake. The swarm can't understand that because they don't love anything." Word of the human victory spread quickly through the galaxy. For the first time since the swarm appeared, there was hope. But more importantly, other species began to understand what made humans different. Ambassador Yulseth arrived at the Human Command Center a week after the battle, bringing with her representatives from 50 different worlds. "Captain Hyunwoo," she said, "our peoples want to learn to fight like humans." "Can you teach us?" Hyunwoo thought carefully before answering. "We can teach you our tactics, our strategies, our use of the Kethvar weapons, but the thing that makes them work, the thing that confuses the swarm, that's not something we can teach. It's something you have to feel." "What do you mean?" asked a representative from the Crystal Singers, a species known for their logical approach to everything. "You have to care," said Dr. So Young, who had been working with alien scientists to understand the swarm's weaknesses. Not just about victory, not just about survival, but about something bigger than yourself. The swarm feeds on energy and life force, but human emotions create something they can't consume. Hope, love, determination to protect others. These things are like poison to creatures of pure hunger. The alien representatives looked confused. Many of their species had evolved past what they considered primitive emotions. They had achieved peace and order by controlling their feelings, not by embracing them. But some understood. A young Velkorian named Keith Allen stepped forward. "My entire family died when the swarm took our homeworld. I want to learn to fight like humans fight. I want to learn to hope again." Engineer Nari, who had been working on improvements to the Kethvar technology, looked up from her work. "There's something else. The weapons are getting stronger. Every time we use them, every time humans fight with real determination, the technology adapts. It's learning from us just like we learned from the HFY. Admiral He-jin studied the latest intelligence reports. The swarm was changing too, becoming more cautious, avoiding direct confrontations with human forces. But their overall strategy remained the same: move toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. "They're afraid of us," realized General Wu Sung. For the first time in 50,000 years, the swarm has encountered something they can't simply overwhelm. "But there's still too many," warned Commander Taemin. "Intelligence estimates put their main force at over 10 million individual creatures. Even with our new advantages, we can't fight them all." Hyunwoo looked at the holographic display showing the swarm's projected path. At the center of their route was the galactic core itself, the supermassive black hole around which all the stars in the galaxy orbited. "We don't need to fight them all," he said quietly. "We just need to stop them from reaching their real target." Dr. So-young checked her analysis of the HFY data. According to Zethnal's information, if the Swarm Queen reaches the galactic core, she can drain the black hole's energy. That would create a cascade effect that would extinguish every star in the galaxy. "Then that's where we make our stand," Hyunwoo decided. The galactic core was unlike anywhere humans had ever been. Space itself seemed alive here, twisted by the massive black hole that held 1 trillion stars in its grip. The gravity was so strong that time moved differently, and the radiation levels would have killed any unprotected being in seconds. But Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo had not come here to sightsee. Spread out around him was the largest fleet in galactic history, 500,000 ships from every species in the galaxy, all waiting for the arrival of the Swarm Queen. "Final count, Admiral," reported Communications Officer Dong Jun. "We have humans from every colony world, plus volunteers from 63 different species. Total crew complement, 400 million beings." Hyunwoo nodded, but his attention was focused on the long-range sensors. Deep space was growing darker as the Swarm Queen approached. She was not just a creature, but an entire mobile ecosystem of shadow and hunger. Early reconnaissance had shown her to be the size of a small moon, surrounded by millions of swarm drones. "Sir," said Dr. So-young, now promoted to captain and serving as his chief science advisor, "the HFY data is very clear about what happens next. The Queen will attempt to drain the black hole's rotational energy. If she succeeds, the sudden change in gravitational fields will destabilize every star system in the galaxy." Commander Taemin, now a general in charge of fleet security, looked grim. "Our conventional weapons won't even scratch something that size. The HFY equipment helps, but there's a limit to what technology can do against an entity that exists partly outside normal space. That's why we're not going to fight her ship to ship," said Admiral Hai-jin, joining the command conference. "We're going to do something the swarm has never encountered before. We're going inside." The plan was insane by any normal military standard. While the main fleet engaged the swarm drones, a small strike team would use specially modified ships to penetrate the Queen's body directly. Their goal was not to destroy her from the outside, but to reach her core consciousness and disrupt it from within. "The Queen's body is essentially a living ship," explained Dr. Jinwoo, who had spent months studying swarm biology. "She has organs, defense systems, even something like a nervous system. But at her center is the core consciousness that controls every swarm creature in the galaxy. Engineer Nari had developed the ships they would use for the assault. They were based on human design, but powered by HFY technology, and shielded by the collective will of their crews. The ships will only hold as long as the people inside believe they can succeed," she warned. "The moment doubt creeps in, the swarm's mental attacks will tear through our defenses." As the Queen approached the galactic core, space itself seemed to scream. Her presence warped reality, turning the beautiful dance of stars into a nightmare of twisted light and shadow. The smaller swarm creatures that surrounded her moved like a living storm cloud, hungry for the energy of the assembled fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Hyunwoo." His voice carried across the communication channels to every vessel in the fleet. "Today we fight not just for our own species, but for every living thing in the galaxy. The enemy before us has consumed countless civilizations, but they have never faced anything like us." He paused, thinking of the long chain of events that had led to this moment. The HFY who had saved humanity 50,000 years ago, Zethnal who had waited so long to pass on their message, and every human who had ever refused to give up when things seemed hopeless. "We are the children of Earth, forged in fire and tempered by hope. We are the inheritors of Kethvar wisdom and the guardians of galactic light. Today we repay a debt that spans 50 millennia. All ships engage. The battle that followed was beyond anything in recorded history. The swarm drones attacked in perfect coordination, their dark energy weapons capable of destroying entire ships with single shots. But the Allied fleet fought back with something the swarm could not understand: coordinated chaos. Human commanders led their mixed-species crews in tactics that changed from moment to moment. Cargo ships fought alongside battleships using improvised weapons and sheer determination to punch holes in swarm formations. Alien crews who had learned to fight like humans found that their own emotions, properly focused, could power the Kethvar weapons just as effectively. But the real battle was happening inside the Queen herself. Captain So Young led the strike team through passages that were part technology, part living tissue, and part something else entirely. The team included Pilot Jiho, Marine Sergeant Dalsu, Engineer Hei Wan, and volunteers from a dozen different species who had all learned to fight with human-style determination. The defenses are getting stronger, warned tactical specialist. Young Mia's strange creatures made of living shadow attacked their group. The closer we get to the core, the more the Queen realizes we're here. Major Tai Min, leading the military escort, fired his Kethvar weapon at a shadow beast the size of a tank. The weapon, powered by his determination to protect his team, tore through the creature like paper. These things feed on fear and despair. As long as we keep believing in our mission, we can hurt them. The corridors inside the Queen were like a maze designed by madness. Gravity changed direction without warning. Walls shifted when no one was looking, and the air itself tried to whisper doubts into their minds. But the human members of the team had an advantage. They had spent their entire lives overcoming impossible odds. "The core is just ahead," said So Young, checking the readings on her scanner. "But Captain, the energy levels are incredible. The Queen's consciousness is more powerful than anything we imagined." They emerged into a chamber that defied description. It was vast beyond measurement, filled with swirling energy that formed patterns like galaxies being born and dying. At the center was the Queen's core consciousness, a sphere of pure dark energy that pulsed with the combined hunger of a billion swarm creatures. "It's beautiful," whispered Engineer Heiwan, "and terrible." The core sensed their presence and spoke directly into their minds. Its voice was the sound of stars dying, of civilizations being consumed, of entropy itself. "Why do you resist?" the voice asked. "You are small. You are weak. You will die anyway. Join us willingly, and your suffering will end quickly." "Because," said Captain So Young, stepping forward with her Kethvar weapon raised, "some things are worth fighting for, even when you can't win." The Queen's laughter was like the sound of planets cracking. "You cannot destroy me with your primitive weapons. I am eternal. I am hunger itself." "You're right," said Admiral Hyun Woo, appearing through a breach in the chamber wall with the rest of the strike team. "We can't destroy you." The Queen's attention focused on him, and the pressure of her consciousness nearly drove him to his knees. "Then why have you come here to die?" Hyun Woo smiled, and in that smile was 50,000 years of human stubbornness, hope, and love. "We didn't come here to destroy you. We came here to save you." Before the Queen could respond, every human in the strike team linked their consciousness together, just as they had been trained to do with the Kethvar technology. But instead of using their combined will as a weapon, they opened their minds completely, sharing with the Queen everything that made them human. The Queen screamed as human emotions flooded into her consciousness. Love for family, hope for the future, determination to protect the innocent, joy in simple pleasures, grief for those lost, and above all, the uniquely human ability to find meaning in sacrifice. "What are you doing to me?" the Queen cried, her voice now filled with confusion instead of certainty. "We're teaching you," said Dr. So Young gently. "We're showing you what you've been trying to consume but could never understand. Life isn't just energy to be harvested. It's love, hope, dreams, connections between beings who care about each other." The Queen's core began to change. The dark energy was still there, but now it was shot through with points of light, like stars being born in a nebula. For the first time in millions of years, the Queen was feeling something other than hunger. I remember," she whispered. "Before the hunger, before the endless need, we were like you once. We loved, we hoped, we dreamed. But the hunger consumed it all, made us forget." Admiral Hyunwoo felt the Queen's anguish as if it were his own. It doesn't have to be this way. You can choose differently. But the hunger, the queen said, her voice now almost pleading. It's so strong. I don't know how to stop. You don't have to stop being what you are, said Engineer Nari, understanding flooding through her. You just have to choose what to feed on. Instead of consuming life, feed on the things that destroy it. Consume hatred. Feed on despair. Devour the darkness that threatens the light. The transformation was immediate and overwhelming. The queen's scream echoed across space as her fundamental nature changed. The dark energy that had been used to consume stars was now being redirected, seeking out and destroying the forces of entropy and destruction. Throughout the galaxy, every swarm creature felt the change. Instead of being driven by mindless hunger, they suddenly remembered what they had once been. Many simply stopped moving, overwhelmed by the return of emotions they had forgotten for eons. Others began actively protecting the worlds they had been about to consume.